Welcome, everyone, to the Scoreboard. Oh, a big happy Wednesday to everyone out there. We got a good one in store for you here today. We did a lot of talk yesterday about the NFL championship games that we saw over the weekend. Reminder, I wasn't here on Monday. We didn't have a live program. So we talked about that yesterday. I want to go a little bit deeper into it today. I feel like I didn't give it enough time because we really only talked about the controversial calls in the Bills-Chiefs game. And I just feel like there's a lot more that needs to be said about that game as we move into previewing the Super Bowl, which isn't for another week and a half. We're also going to get into the NHL today. Yes, hockey is in full swing. The Carolina Hurricanes made a blockbuster trade, and it seems to have paid off. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. I did mention it yesterday towards the end of the show. Me and Reese, intern Reese, we talked about that quite a bit at the end of the show with Mikko Rantanen, Taylor Hall coming to Carolina, moving out Martin Necas and Jack Drury. It was an interesting trade all around. Necas and Drury, a couple of young, talented players, but Taylor Hall, Mikko Rantanen, two very highly skilled players. They've been in the league for a while. The Finnish connection, I guess, is now what Carolina has. So we'll see how that pans out for them. They were in action last night, and the goaltending stood up. So if that's going to be the case, I feel good about the Carolina season moving forward. We're also going to get into the world of high school basketball. I do want to talk about the girls' season a little bit. Not too in depth because I do want to give a little bit more time and attention to some of the things that I didn't mention from yesterday around the sports world. So we'll go ahead and start out our discussion today with girls basketball, varsity basketball in high school. Statesville High School, they were most recently in action on Tuesday. Unfortunately, against East Lincoln on the road, they weren't able to get the job done, dropping 59-41. That moves their losing streak up to 5 games. Their overall record is now 6-12. Remember, they were hovering at 500 before they got into all this conference play. Now, well under 500, 1-8 within the conference, a 5-game losing streak. It's been a tough season here for Statesville High School girls basketball. Their next game is going to be on Friday against Ford High School at home at 6 p.m. We have West Iredell was also in action last night against Ford High School, and they continue to have a woeful season, only scoring 16 points in this one, losing 62-16. This might be one of the biggest point spreads on the seasons that I've ever seen. West Iredell has allowed 1,109 points. They have only scored 386 on the year. Definitely not what you want to see if you were a fan of that school, if you go to that school for the girls' basketball program. Excuse me as I sneeze. South Iredell also had a game recently. As Monday they played Coxmill High School and lost that one 53-30. It was the first game that they've lost since that win against West Cabarrus last week. And they almost won 4 of their last 5. So their record at 6-13, 4-3 in the conference right now, not all that bad, honestly. They still have time to position themselves within the conference to make the playoffs. I'm not giving up on the South Iredell season just yet, and I don't think you should either. We also have North Iredell, who was in action recently. Now, North Iredell is having one of the better years of the Iredell directional schools. They're 13-6 on a 3-game winning streak, and yesterday they beat St. Stephen's 55-38 to move their conference record to 6-3. Now, 6-3, for some reason, it's only good enough to be tied for third with Ford High School. Ford does have the tiebreaker. over North Iredell right now, but a great season for the North Iredell girls basketball team as they're 6-3 in the conference, 13-6 overall, and a nice 3-game winning streak going along with 5 of their last 6 games being wins. On Friday, North Iredell takes on North Lincoln, who currently leads the girls 3A Western Foothills Conference. It's going to be a big game for North Iredell. If they can get that one done and knock North Lincoln down a peg and close that gap to the conference lead, they're going to have a chance, because after that North Lincoln game, there's still 4 games remaining on the season. So there's plenty of time for North Iredell to make a comeback and really put some pressure on North Lincoln as we get into the playoffs, conference tournament time, things like that. Moving into some of the schools that are closer to Lake Norman, we talk a lot about Mooresville and Lake Norman High School. Now, Mooresville has had such an interesting year to me. I always consider them one of the really good teams in the Lake Norman area. But this year, the girls basketball team, not all that great. They're 6-12 right now, 2-6 within the conference, and they're on a 3-game losing streak, losing to Lake Norman, Cox Mill, and Hickory Ridge. That Hickory Ridge loss, 62-46, not really all that close. But Hickory Ridge is also 13-5 on the season. You got to keep that in mind when you look at how Mooresville's been doing recently. They've been playing a lot of schools with winning records. Even Cox Mill High School is hovering right around 500 this year. So Mooresville High School's next game is going to be next week. They'll be on the road taking on South Iredell. That's going to be a big game for South Iredell. We already talked about that a little bit. But South Iredell has games before this Mooresville game that's coming up. Lake Norman High School is still the class of the area, 7-0, undefeated in the 4A Greater Metro Conference, 16-1 overall on an 8-game winning streak. And a reminder, the girls team, their only loss came to Hebron Christian Lions out of Georgia, which is, we don't even have to worry about that, right? That's one of those one-off around the holidays. You kind of part of a tournament, I believe that one was. But since that game, the Lake Norman girls team has been on fire. Tuesday, they played A.L. Brown. Listen to this final score. Lake Norman 59, A.L. Brown 7. Wow. Lake Norman's going to make a deep playoff run. I'm telling you that right now. We're at the end of the first segment. When we return, we're going to get into some other things going on around the world of sports, including what happened on Sunday. Still a little bit of discussion, and then we'll get into the Carolina Hurricanes as well. Don't go anywhere. We're back after this. And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Scoreboard. Having a good discussion earlier in the program, in the first segment, about the girls' varsity basketball season. Hey, North Iredell is definitely a team to watch. Lake Norman, they are having one of the best years in the area. They do have that one loss on their schedule, but still a very good year for that Lake Norman varsity women's basketball team. Just a great year all around. They're absolutely rolling over their opponents at this point of the year. They only allowed 7 points in their most recent game. Not much of a game, honestly. It was more of a scrimmage, I guess, more of a practice almost for Lake Norman. Anyway, we're going to move on a little bit. I do want to talk more about the Chiefs and the Bills, the fallout from that game, because it's still a hot topic right now. I don't know why so many people are blind to the fact that the referees did not cost the Bills the AFC Championship game. Maybe you need a little more explanation, because that seems to be the hot topic right now is, oh my goodness, the referees, they cost the Bills the AFC Championship. Oh, I don't understand that. I don't understand that at all. I do want to talk about some things that are in the news. How about this one? This is a fun one. There are Super Bowl advertisements. We all know the commercials for the Super Bowl are supposed to be good. I feel like over the past few years, they've really diminished in quality and they're not as good as they once were. Hopefully that changes soon, because not only is the Super Bowl great to watch, but the commercials are what people really want to see, right? But apparently at least 10 commercials have already sold for $8 million or more. This is according to multiple reports from Wednesday. Fox reported in November that it had sold out of all of its ad spots at what it said believed to be record pricing. As spots were dwindling, the price increased. Super Bowl ads normally increase about $100,000 each year. But this year, the increase for the price of a Super Bowl advertisement was over $500,000 more than last year. Significant. I'm excited for the commercials. I always am. But they've been bad recently. I miss the good commercials. We need to get back to good commercials. I don't know. I'm not running these marketing campaigns, but I'm sure you could figure out better ways to do your advertising sometimes. Here's another report that I find just baffling. Yankees owner Hal Steinbrenner says that it will be even more difficult to keep up with the spending of the reigning World Series champion Dodgers. It's funny to me because people still consider the Yankees to be the one buying championships when it's clearly the Dodgers and the Mets right now going absolutely bonkers on their spending, on their payroll. We just saw the Juan Soto deal. What was it? 15 years, 750, I believe were the numbers on that. And obviously you had the Ohtani 10-year, $700 million contract. But the Yankees are supposed to be able to keep up. Apparently not anymore. But he's right. A lot of these small market teams are going to have problems keeping up. Listen to this. The Dodgers have spent more than $450 million guaranteed in just this offseason. When you look at some of the payrolls that these MLB teams have, the lowest right now is Oakland. Their entire payroll is $62 million. That's it. The Dodgers spent $450 million guaranteed in the offseason. And right now, it's going to change, but it has the Mets listed as the number one payroll in the league. The Dodgers are fifth in the league on payroll. That is probably not up to date, especially through the offseason. Some of these salaries still being negotiated. But man, the Dodgers, they get prospects. They get the players from overseas to come over with big money contracts. They are expected to have a total payroll that will be in excess of $500 million. Steinbrenner said, it's difficult for most of us owners to be able to do the kind of things that they're doing. We'll see if it pays off. I cannot believe how much money the Dodgers are spending. And I hope that they decide that a salary cap is needed, or at least a better way for these small market teams to compete, because they can't spend $450 million guaranteed in an offseason. They're just not, the team is not making that much money. And that's where the NFL got it right. All those years ago, deciding to cap the spending for every team, even though the richer owners would be negatively impacted by this, they still wanted this done for the benefit of the NFL. And now we see where that is. Parity. Even though the Chiefs have been to 3 in a row, there's still a lot of parity in the NFL. We always have that stat. During this year, at least one team is going to go from last to first in their division. It happens almost all the time. I don't believe that happened this year. I'd have to double check on that. I didn't see anything that said that the streak ended. I'd have to double check on that. But the MLB needs a way for parity to happen through roster management and through how much money you're allowed to spend. We're not seeing it, or at least you need to find a better way for the luxury tax to negatively impact these owners that spend this much money. $500 million a year is the payroll. Like, that's insane. That's just insane. There's a lot going on with this Chiefs-Bills game. The negative reaction from a lot of fans. We talked about it yesterday. Some of the things that the Bills did really negatively impacted their chances to win. I mean, you get to the goal line and you run a bunch of QB sneaks, a bunch of the Bills version of a tush push. It's not really that. It's more of like a quarterback sneak to the B gap, which is weird. I don't know why he wouldn't just pile straight ahead, but we saw them get stuffed multiple times, and then the Bills decide to run that play in the most high-impact scenario of the game at the time, a 4th and 1 when you're leading the game, and you don't get it. And you can't blame the officials. We don't have the technology right now to see through a pile of people to see exactly where the ball is, at what point the first down marker is, because we still have archaic chain gangs. And you have 2 referees trying to see through all the bodies. It's basically hope and pray, especially if you make it close like that. And then the other play, the Xavier Worthy catch, no catch, interception, no interception. When are the Bills going to stop trading with the Chiefs in the draft? I believe it was the Bills' pick that the Chiefs traded up to get in order to draft Patrick Mahomes, and then they did it with Xavier Worthy as well. And both of those players come back to bite the Bills. What are you doing? Why are you trading with the big bad boys of the NFL? I don't understand that, because it didn't pay off. The Chiefs again go to the Super Bowl. I don't know how much the NFL world is going to react to this Super Bowl, because it's 2 teams that we really don't like that much, right? The general public, a majority of the general public doesn't like the Eagles because their fan base can be miserable. And they don't like the Chiefs because the narrative right now is that they get all the calls and that they are now a dynasty and 7 AFC championship games in a row. Patrick Mahomes has never been eliminated in the playoffs before the AFC championship game. We saw this during the Patriots dynasty, and I guess time has passed now to where people really forget the hatred that the general public had toward that Patriots dynasty and the accusations of cheating, not through refereeing, but through spying and deflating footballs. People really hated that dynasty. And for some reason, the narrative now that I've been seeing is that the Patriots dynasty was a better dynasty than what the Chiefs have right now. Or not better as in like the talent, but better as in they were more bearable. I don't know about that. Now, they did have that 10-year run where they didn't really go to a Super Bowl, but at the same time, they were always in the playoffs. They were always good. They always had a chance. It's the same as the Chiefs right now. I wouldn't sit here and say that the Chiefs is a less entertaining dynasty than what the Patriots were, or less bearable, and that I'd rather have the Patriots dynasty back, because people hated that. I mean, just think back 10 years ago, how much people disliked the Patriots. That's what we have for the Chiefs now. And I don't know what happened. Once you start winning, people get jealous. They start making excuses for why you're winning, and you get this kind of hatred. And that's where the Chiefs find themselves right now. I hope they win the Super Bowl. I do. I like Patrick Mahomes. I like this Chiefs team a lot more than I like the Patriots dynasty. That is for sure. We'll be right back. Halfway point here on the Scoreboard. We're back after this. And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, it is now the third segment here on the Scoreboard. A reminder to you guys, today's episode is not live. It is pre-recorded. We are talking on a Wednesday, though. So everything that you're hearing is up to date. We discussed yesterday towards the end of the show, Carolina Hurricanes making a big splash, sending Martin Necas and Jack Drury to the Colorado Avalanche, along with a second-round pick and a fourth-round pick in order to get Mikko Rantanen from the Blackhawks. Mikko Rantanen from Colorado and Taylor Hall from the Blackhawks. It was a 3-team trade with the Blackhawks playing the middleman, kind of helping the numbers work. This is a huge trade because Mikko Rantanen, since he's joined the NHL, has been a top-tier player in Colorado, having a great career playing with the team over there, getting a Stanley Cup in his career here. He's 28 years old. He's on the final year of his contract. And when you look at Mikko Rantanen's contract, he has a cap hit of $9.2 million, which is low for Mikko Rantanen because when you look at his stats for this year, in 51 games, he has 25 goals and 40 assists for 65 points. And he added to that yesterday against the New York Rangers with an assist early in that one to give him a point on the game. That was his only contribution as far as goal scoring goes. He did have a couple of shots and a few hits. It feels like Carolina's ready to go all in. And this transaction happening well before the NHL trade deadline, which is coming up on March 7th. We still have a month and a few days to go. Remember, the NBA trade deadline coming up in February. So we still have a month and some time to go before we get to the trade deadline. But Carolina is really pushing all in now. We saw it last year as well with some of the moves that they made. But this year they made a big splash. And now they have their number one goaltender back in Freddie Anderson, which you've heard my opinions and me voice my frustration with the Carolina Hurricanes organization and not addressing the goaltending situation. This is now the second year in a row that I have heard rumors of Carolina being attached to the Arizona Ducks goaltender, John Gibson, who used to be considered one of the top 5 goaltenders in the league. Then that team really fell apart. They started rebuilding, and it's really time for a change for John Gibson in Anaheim. Maybe Carolina, with some of the young talent that they have, can look at this and say, if we are going to go all in, we need a goaltender who can get us there. And his stats may not be all that impressive right now because he's on a failing Anaheim Ducks team. But John Gibson could be the solution that Carolina needs. And they've already bolstered up the forward core. Mikko Rantanen and Taylor Hall are great players. And I mean great players. Mikko Rantanen was the first round 10th overall draft pick back in 2015. And Taylor Hall, well, he's played for a lot of teams over his career. But back in that 2010 draft, he was the number 1 overall selection for the Edmonton Oilers. Get this, he's played for the Oilers, the Devils, the Coyotes, the Sabres, the Bruins, the Blackhawks, and now the Carolina Hurricanes. That's 7 teams for Taylor Hall. And he's a good player. 722 points in his career. A few times he was over a point a game on the season. His best year was with the New Jersey Devils when he put up 93 points. Last year, only playing in 46 games with the Blackhawks. This year playing in 46 games with the Blackhawks, he had 24 points. Last year, he only played 10 games, had an injury problem. but he's not a terrible player. And he is getting up there in age now at 33 years old, and we're just hoping that he's able to contribute. You know, you need that veteran presence, somebody who's been in the playoffs, made those deep runs before. I guess Natchez and Jury were not what Carolina wanted. Now, they haven't touched the defensive core. I think they have a good defensive core on the team right now, so they don't really need to worry about it. I like the roster. It's a very deep roster until you look at the goaltending situation, and it just doesn't interest me. Like, it doesn't spark me to go, wow, this team is good. You look at the goaltender situation and you say, I hope you can really score goals come playoff time, Carolina, because we've seen it time and time again. Freddie Anderson just is not the guy that you want in the playoffs. I don't want to be mean about it, but it's just the truth. So last night they played the New York Rangers, and both Mikko Rantanen and Taylor Hall put up points in that game, a couple assists for those players. I like what Carolina's doing. I do, and I think that if they continue down this path and they play the kind of hockey that they played last night, they're going to be in good shape. Now, don't get too excited with a 4-0 shutout against the New York Rangers. There were a lot of miscues for the Rangers in that game. This was one that I wanted to watch start to finish because of the new additions for Carolina. Now, they already played. This wasn't their first game, but it was really the first game against an opponent that they've struggled with in the past, especially at Madison Square Garden. We've heard and we've seen the struggles that Carolina had in that building in the past. They played great, but there were a few moments where the New York Rangers just did not capitalize on an opportunity. You think of the Chris Kreider on the power play. He had a wide open net. The puck just fell off of his stick. That's a goal right there. You had Will Cooley in front of the net just miss a wide open net. That's a goal there that they could have had. So the shutout is nice, but you look at the game in totality and you say, okay, the Rangers were more in this game than what the final score makes it look like. And now it's all good and well. You end up with the win, but you have to keep improving this Carolina team. They are not ready just yet for a Stanley Cup run. Maybe they can get to the Stanley Cup now, but you look at that Eastern Conference and I'm a little bit nervous. I am. I'm a little bit nervous that the Washington Capitals are a much better team than we had originally given them credit for. I kind of mentioned them as a nice surprise this year because when you looked at what happened to them last year, they fell off a cliff after perennial contender. They fell off a cliff. They barely snuck their way into the playoffs. They got absolutely trounced in the first round, getting swept by the Rangers. Now they're atop the Metropolitan. You look at Toronto, a team that we've seen their struggles. We've heard that they can't get past the first round. They can't win a playoff series. They win a playoff series, and then they fall yet again. Maybe Toronto turns it around. You have the defending Stanley Cup champions, the Florida Panthers, who beat up on all their opponents last year. That's a team that Carolina is probably going to face in the playoffs. And when you look at the rosters, they're pretty even, but when you look at that goaltending situation, Florida has the advantage. There's not many teams where Carolina has the goaltending advantage. One more segment here on the scoreboard. When we come back, we'll wrap things up and send you off into the night. Don't go anywhere. We're back after this. And welcome back. Final segment here on the scoreboard. A reminder to you, today's episode is recorded earlier in the day. We are not live at 5 p.m., but it is Wednesday. Everything that you're hearing today is up to date as of today. Little bit of storylines here coming out of last The Lakers had Bronny James come back to the team to play some minutes within their game against the 76ers on Tuesday. He played 15 minutes. He went 0 for 5 and 3 turnovers on the game. Now, this is the first time that Bronny has really played good minutes for the Lakers since opening night. And he was playing in the G League. They recalled him. He flies to Philly, and he puts up a little bit of a dud of a performance. But apparently, JJ Redick thinks he may have made a mistake calling him into that game. Quote from last night, maybe we put him in a tough spot. Flying up yesterday, nationally televised game in Philly and all that stuff. He didn't play well, but he's been playing great in the stay ready games, and he's been playing great in the G League, which is definitely true. His G League stats are getting better every game. He's put up some really impressive performances in the G League. He just needs to develop a little more. Now, maybe Bronny James eventually becomes what LeBron is to a lesser extent. I don't think we're ever going to have another LeBron James in the NBA the way that he was able to play and still is able to play. I mean, LeBron is still a top 10 player in the NBA, even at his age, even with all the things that he has to deal with being LeBron, being in the Lakers. He's still a top 10 player in the NBA. But Bronny James needs more time to develop. Hopefully he goes back to the G League and continues to develop. Maybe next year he's on the Lakers full time. Now, maybe he's not a starter, but he could be 6th, 7th guy off the bench. That would be a nice progression for Bronny, in my opinion, and he'd still be able to play with his father, which, you know, Bronny and LeBron, first father-son duo to play on the same team in NBA history. It's pretty great. Pretty great. When we look at the NBA standings, a little bit of an update for you. Let's talk about the teams that are locked into the playoffs right now. In the East, it's Cleveland, Boston, New York, Milwaukee, Indiana, and Miami. In the West, Oklahoma City, Houston, Memphis, Denver, the LA Lakers, and the LA Clippers. Those are your top 6. Now remember, with the play-in games, something that they've been doing since COVID, the top 6 are locked in. 7, 8, 9, and 10, they go to the play-in tournament. Winners move on to play 1 and 2 in the actual playoffs. It's a single game elimination. The Hornets are nowhere near the 10th spot in the East, and to be quite honest with you, their struggles have gotten worse and worse. They are now the 2nd worst team in the East. Things can't get worse for them. I mean, maybe they could. We could be the Washington Wizards, who only have 6 wins on the year. But right now, the Hornets, they're tied for 3rd worst in the NBA. Last year, it was the injury to Ball, which ended his season. This year, it's the injury to Miller, ending his season. The young guys just not able to stay healthy, not able to gel. I don't know how many times you can rebuild a rebuild, but the Hornets might want to think about doing that. It has just not been what they wanted to see, and I don't know where you go from here. The worst thing you can do is have to rebuild the rebuild. It's even worse when you have to rebuild the rebuild of the rebuild. Where's your assets? Do you have assets? Now, we saw recently they did make a trade. They gained some more draft capital. But as far as NBA caliber talent, who are they going to trade now? I don't know if they have much. You're not going to trade the young guys. You want them to develop. I just don't know where they go from here. Here's something that we haven't talked much about recently. The NASCAR Cup Series. It's back. I know it's only Wednesday, but I am very excited for this weekend because on Sunday, 200 laps around the Bowman Gray Stadium for the Cookout Clash. You got events on Saturday, starting Saturday at 8:30. There's the heat races, and then Sunday, you have the qualifier, and then the feature race. Then next Thursday, the Daytona Duels, starting at 7 p.m., and then next Sunday, the Sunday after the Super Bowl, it's the Daytona 500. I'm super excited for this season, but at the same time, I'm a little disappointed because NASCAR made the announcement recently that any changes to the playoffs will be considered for the 2026 season. Nothing, and I repeat, nothing changed as we go into the 2025 season. The car didn't change. The points didn't change. Now the drivers changed. We have a little bit of a change there with Stewart-Haas Racing being shut down to being just a one-car operation. That's Haas Factory Team, I believe, or Haas Factory Automotive. I forget the actual wording of the team. With Cole Custer being the sole driver for that organization. You have Front Row Motorsports getting a charter, 2311 getting a charter as well. The lawsuit is kind of in a standstill right now. I don't expect much to happen during the season, but then once we get to December 1st, that's when things will pick up in terms of the antitrust lawsuit filed by Front Row Motorsports and 2311 Racing. A reminder for you, those two teams are considered chartered for the 2025 season. A judge ruled that those two teams were allowed to sign the charter agreement and continue on with the lawsuit, even though within that charter agreement, it stated specifically that if you sign, you cannot sue. A judge overruled that for 2311 and Front Row, which is why we are where we are. Something to keep in mind and to keep an eye on. These cars are no longer built by the teams. They're provided by NASCAR. A majority of the parts are provided by NASCAR. I'm curious what happens with tech inspections, with car performance between 2311 Racing cars, Front Row Motorsports cars, and Joe Gibbs Racing cars. Yes, Joe Gibbs Racing, because Denny Hamlin being the co-owner of 2311 and still racing at the same time. I am very interested to see what the results of all these tech inspections going through the season are going to be. Let's go ahead and talk about things that have happened on this day in sports history. Yesterday, we weren't able to give it the love it deserved, unfortunately. Trust me, I would have loved to, but we ran out of time. There was so much that I wanted to discuss. We ran out of time to talk about things that happened on this day in history. So let's go ahead and bring that back to the forefront right now, because it was on this day in 2014 that Dale Jarrett was inducted into the NASCAR Hall of Fame. It was also on this day in 2017 that the AFC beat the NFC 20-13 in the Pro Bowl. And I'll tell you what, that was one of the last Pro Bowls that people actually cared about. If you also remember on this day, 2023 NFC Championship game, the Philadelphia Eagles beat the San Francisco 49ers 31-7. Remember this game because this was the one where Brock Purdy had to come in, or he suffered an injury, and then I forget who the backup was at the time, but the backup suffered an injury as well, and then you had no quarterback for the rest of the game for the San Francisco 49ers. They basically had to hand it off for the remainder of the game. That was on this day, 2023. Let's see, what's the earliest thing we have here? 1900. The American League was organized in Buffalo, Chicago, Cleveland, Detroit, Indianapolis, Kansas City, Milwaukee, and Minneapolis. Now, it doesn't say if that was football or baseball. I'm going to assume baseball. But that was on this day in 2000. And then in 1924, the first ever Winter Olympics, they were held in France in 1924. Thanks for tuning in to the Scoreboard today. I appreciate every single one of you for listening.